Welcome to the Thief Rogue Challenge, where I try to make it as a self-found, hardcore rogue that can only equip stolen items, which I've defined to mean any piece of gear obtained through pickpocketing, lockboxes, and chests. Last time, we began our challenge among the remote branches of Teldrassil, and with no reliable method of obtaining a weapon, we relied entirely on our fists to carry us slowly and surely through as much content as we could manage. Along the way, we also collected a few pieces of gear from the rank 1 battered chests in Shadowglen, those being a pair of ragged leather gloves, a pair of frayed cloth pants, and a ragged cloak. And upon reaching level 8, we set off for Elwynn Forest, hoping to finally find ourselves a weapon from their better selection of rank 2 chests. But as you probably remember, we have a pretty big challenge ahead of us if we want to get there. The Wetlands, a zone filled with high-level mobs that patrol near the road to Logout. But before we do that, I need to make a quick point of clarification regarding the rules of the challenge. In the last video, a few of you pointed out in the comments that I purchased a bag from the vendor in Dolinar, meaning that this item can't really be considered stolen. So what's up with that? The short answer? Bags don't really count. Now, since that makes me sound like one of those annoying kids on the playground that like to change the rules whenever it suits them, let me clarify. This is actually something that I heavily considered back when I was originally planning the rule set for this challenge, and I think it was mainly my poor choice of wording in the first video that didn't properly convey the limits of the stolen restriction. And since bags technically need to be equipped to use them, at first glance it makes sense to restrict them just like with gear. But in practice, restricting our bags doesn't really have the same effect as restricting gear does. When it comes to challenge running, there are tons of different restrictions that people like to throw around, so I tend to think of game restrictions in two different ways. First, there's restrictions where you apply a disadvantage that changes the way you play the game by requiring more thought or skill, which provides additional difficulty in a way that generally enhances the experience. As for the other type of restrictions, these are the ones people usually throw in not to make the game more difficult per se, but instead to make the game more tedious, usually by forcing a player to do repetitive tasks that mainly act as a time sink without a worthwhile incentive other than the fact that the run requires it. This is why when devising the rules for this challenge, I decided to focus the run primarily around stolen gear, because by forcing yourself to wear bad gear, it changes the way you think about combat and engaging enemies, making you rely more on game knowledge, strategy, positioning, etc. And these are the kinds of restrictions that I enjoy the most. So when it comes to restricting bags, this would fall more so into the tedious time sink category of restrictions, as the only real effect it would have on the run is that it would require us to constantly run back and forth between vendors and objective locations, or make us constantly delete items from our inventory much more frequently than normal, which would also have the side effect of hindering one of the few bonuses of this challenge, that being the extra money that comes from selling all the items we would normally be able to use. So when it comes down to it, while I'm sure there are some WoW classic masochists out there who would love to spend as much time as possible emptying their baseline backpack until they somehow manage to find a few bags from chests, I, unfortunately, am not one of those people. And so to keep myself sane, and since the main point of this challenge is to just have fun, I decided to define gear as everything equipped within the character pane. So with that out of the way, I'm sure you're probably all wondering whether or not I made it to Elywnn Forest. Well, it's at this point that I have to admit something. Remember last time when I said that the only way to get to Elwynn was the Wetlands run? Well, I kinda lied to you. Well, not even kind of. I deliberately and blatantly lied, specifically so I could tell you about it later, but there's actually another, much safer way to get to Elywnn Forest, one that involves swimming. While it definitely takes way longer than the Wetlands run, you can actually swim all the way around Dunmoreau and exit the water along the coast of Westfall, and then sneak your way past a few murlocs to reach Elywnn. Now, a handful of you mentioned this method to me in the comments of the last video, but what if I told you that I actually lied again? That there's also a third method that is not only safer, but faster than both of the previous methods. Now, if you've been following the classic WoW community for some time now, you may be familiar with something called logout skips, where players were able to put themselves in strange locations, usually involving a cave or a building, and upon logging out and logging back in, they would find themselves somewhere completely different, usually at the nearest graveyard, or at the gates of a capital city, if the skip was done within that location's shard of the map. But unfortunately for us, logout skips were patched out of the game some time ago during the events of Season of Discovery, meaning that this method is no longer possible. But that doesn't mean our options are fully exhausted just yet. Oh no! It would appear that my in-game character is totally and completely stuck in this oddly specific spot, with absolutely nowhere to go. Whatever am I to do about this totally legitimate and accidental situation that I found myself in? If only there was a specific service offered by the developers to move my character to a different location when conundrums such as these occur. Oh look! It's the official World of Warcraft Character Unstuck service. I wonder where they will put me to solve my current dilemma. Wow, what a crazy coincidence! It would appear that after using the official character unstuck service, that my character has suddenly been transported to the gates of Ironforge. How convenient and utterly well designed the service is, or that it works in such a way that this was only possible because I was utilizing it exclusively with its intended purpose in mind. I can't imagine someone doing something like this when they're not actually stuck to try and skip something incredibly dangerous. Clearly only someone that's a coward, unlike myself, would do something so heinous. So now that we've made it to Ironforge using totally honorable and not at all hypocritical means, we then grab the flight path and take a ride on the Deep Run tram, dropping us off at the wonderfully scenic Dwarven district of Stormwind. And after we grab the flight path, we then make our way into the lush forest of Elywnn to search for chests. And our first location to check is actually pretty close, being the Defias camp just outside the city. But since there didn't appear to be anything there, we only managed to get a few copper pieces from pickpocketing. Since we're close, we also make a quick stop by the Northshire Abbey to look for some easy rank 1 chests, but once again we leave empty-handed, as none of them seem to be up. So we press onward to Goldshire, where we finally remember to train Evasion from the Rogue Trainer. Now, unlike most of our abilities so far, Evasion is a fantastic addition to our moveset because, it's actually usable without a weapon. It provides us with a much needed defensive ability, increasing our dodge chance by an absolutely insane 50% for 15 seconds. And with this new ability at our disposal, it was now finally time to get back to some questing near the best chest location of all, the fargodeep mine. Pharrell, isn't that one of the most notorious locations for people to die in hardcore? Yes! You see, at first glance, it might look like this location just has one giant chest cluster, but there's actually two. One for all the chests inside the mine, and another for the chests outside the mine, which I found to be the easiest rank 2 chests to farm. And so, after being extorted by a child for some pork belly pie, we head into the mine to face the fearsome kobold by the name of Goldtooth. But in reality, it would seem like the fearsome Goldtooth is actually quite fearful, as he couldn't bring it upon himself to respect the 1v1 and ran off to get some help, meaning that we needed to abandon the fight. Now that might make me seem like a coward too, but remember, he ran away first, so it basically cancels out, right? Plus, there was another group in there going after him anyways, so it wouldn't have been nearly as satisfying if they helped us. So in the meantime, while we waited for Goldtooth to respawn, we decided to do a bit of perusing around the cave to look for chests, and not long after, we were able to find our first rank 2 chest tucked away in this dead end, which gave us not 1, but 2 usable white rarity items, those being a pair of cloth journeyman's boots with 11 armor, and a pair of burnt leather bracers with 20. And with the added encouragement from our new upgrades, it was now time for our rematch with Goldtooth. And while another enemy did spawn during the fight, we were able to quickly kite him away, narrowly avoiding the possibility of another interrupted 1v1. But then like a few seconds later, Goldtooth decided to just run straight into another kobold in the opposite direction anyways. This time, we decided to stand our ground, not only so that we could kill Goldtooth, but also to defeat the interloper, and once again to prove the fact that we're not cowards. Although if we didn't have any health potions here, we totally would have died, so that's totally just another dub for alchemy by the way. Shortly after, we managed to find another chest right outside the mine. However, as we go to open it, we end up being rudely interrupted by a kobold just as a nearby paladin started to approach. Now we were both in the nearby area at the time, close enough to where neither of us could lay complete claim to the chest, but luckily, by using my well-refined rhetorical skills, we managed to convince the paladin to let us have the chest, and as if it were a reward from Agrind himself, thank you for watching my clan video by the way, Agrind, we were gifted with a phenomenal, astonishing, just absolutely stupendous feeble sword. The very same item that taunted me back in Teldrassil with its insanely unreliable pickpocket data. And so, after parting ways with our polite paladin friend, we make our way back to Stormwind to visit none other than Wu Ping, who is not only a master of weaponry, but a brother in bravery, as he too displays the courage necessary to enter public establishments without a shirt on. And after being blessed by his wisdom of the blade, we're finally able to equip a weapon and generate our very first combo point of the entire run. And after that, I may have gotten a little bit carried away. After our killing spree, we make a quick stop at the Rogue Trainer in Goldshire to catch up on all of our melee skills, and then head back into the Kobold Mine to finish our quests. We also managed to find another chest outside the mine, but this one was far less exciting, as it just contained some food and crafting materials. After hitting level 9, we then move on to our next chest location, Crystal Lake. Now when it comes to murlocs, they're quite famous for being packed tightly together, making it difficult to grab one at a time, especially for those like ourselves who don't have a ranged option to pull with. And while Crystal Lake is a nice introduction to every player's hatred of these fish creatures, it does have a pretty good amount of solo murlocs surrounding the lake, while most of the large groups tend to conglomerate around the central islands. But since we're looking for chests, we're just gonna go straight for the islands. Strangely enough though, while it's incredibly easy to accidentally pull huge packs of murlocs here, these mobs seem to behave really weirdly when it comes to their aggro leash. Sometimes they'll let you kite them away and into the water, but in my experience, most of the time they'll just randomly start evading and reset when you take them just a short distance away from their camp. Now while this does make engaging with them much safer, allowing us to kill just one of the pack before resetting the rest, these murlocs also seem to have hyperspawn, which, if you're not familiar, is a popular term used to describe mobs that respawn very quickly and continuously in order to keep a certain number of them alive at all times. Now this is a very useful feature when there are lots of active players, or if you like to mob grind for your levels, but for us, this just means it's going to be a lot more frustrating to farm this specific chest cluster. But since we're here, we decide to take the risk, since we haven't really explored our limits since obtaining our weapon. In this specific pull, I attempted to kill 2 murlocs at once. My plan was to use gouge on one of them while we killed the other, but the gouge ended up missing, meaning that we would have to face tank both of their attacks at the same time. But with the added strength of our feeble sword, we were able to quickly kill the first one just as we hit around 60% of our health, meaning that we could officially kill more than one mob at a time. But just as we defeated the first murloc, a third one immediately spawned and began attacking us. But despite this, with the aid of a health potion, we were still able to safely dispatch all 3 murlocs without our HP falling dangerously low. However, their fast respawn rate continued to be a pretty big roadblock. Eventually, a friendly warrior came along and helped clear the camp to complete the quest associated with these murlocs, and graciously passed on the opportunity for a chest. But even after all our hard work, the chest contained nothing more than some copper, a health potion, and an unwearable male chest piece. After that, we turn in our kelp fronds, help this woman abandon her family for some dude, and do a quick check by the fargodeep mine for another chest. And luckily, there was another one just outside. And after dealing with a few annoying respawns, we managed to obtain a cloth patchwork belt, giving us another 8 armor. On our way to the next questing hub, we make another stop by Crystal Lake and manage to clear out a chest spawn on our own this time. But in the end, the chest only ended up containing some more crafting materials, so we decide to move on to the Eastvale logging camp. And while we're here, I should probably talk about grouping. Back in the old days of the community-run hardcore challenge, in addition to everyone basically playing with self-found rules, players also weren't allowed to group with others unless you were doing dungeons with other verified hardcore players, or unless you were playing in a duo, trio, or what do you call 4 people? Anyways, the restrictions on grouping were originally in place to prevent mixing multi-life characters and one-life characters whenever possible, since the hardcore add-on could only do so much, and a lot of it was based around the honor system. But while you can always just reject a group invite, you can't always stop people from helping you anyways. For example, when they randomly help you kill something, heal you during a fight, or even when they just throw a random buff on you as you run down the road. So, these types of interactions were deemed acceptable, so long as hardcore players didn't actively request this kind of aid, leaving assistance from others as part of the luck of the run. These restrictions were obviously lifted upon the release of the official hardcore servers, since everyone on them was guaranteed to be a one-life character, but occasionally, the former grouping restrictions will still pop up from time to time in different challenge runs. As for my stance on grouping, even though I can't expect everyone around me to adhere to the same restrictions I'm placing on myself as a thief rogue, I'm still going to allow myself to group with others because, first of all, I know they're all at least hardcore, and second of all, I'm a large advocate for the fact that since this is an MMO, it doesn't make much sense to avoid interactions with other players. So just like the unexpected help aspect from the community rule set, I'll be considering moments like these, where I work with those around me to complete a specific quest, to be part of the luck of the run. And in a slightly similar capacity, I'll never be directly asking people to go out of their way to help with something. So as long as it's clear that someone is attempting to complete the same objective as me, I don't have any qualms about asking to group with them. Now this doesn't mean I'm just going to start grouping every chance I get, because that would be kind of lame and wouldn't be good content, but my main philosophy is to adhere to what's generally considered common courtesy among the player base. Because even though we're stealing things, there's still honor among thieves, right? Getting back to the challenge, shortly after grouping to kill some wolves, we then hit level 10, where we finally begin to collect talent points. So this brings up another great question. What spec are we going to go? Well, I think subtlety is probably the most fitting class archetype for a thief such as ourselves, since we're mainly relying on chests guarded by multiple enemies. We're just going to be boring and choose combat because honestly we need all the help we can get. So we toss our first point into improved Sinister Strike to reduce the cost of our main damage ability, and continue on slaughtering the local wildlife. The rest of the group ended up finishing with the Prowlers first, so eventually I was left to deal with the rest on my own, but as I did so, the game's RNG decided to taunt me with not one, but 2 green drops in a row from the wolves, one being a one-handed sword, and the other being a 2-handed axe, which we can't really use, but either way, both were sold to a vendor, as neither of them were stolen. After that, we made a quick stop by the Brackwell Pumpkin Patch to solo Princess by popping Evasion and then resetting the ads, and then made our way back to Goldshire to train our level 10 abilities, which are some of our best upgrades yet, those being Slice and Dice, our new default combo point spender that will increase our attack speed, Sprint, which increases our movement speed by 50% for 15 seconds, which will serve as a very powerful escape tool. Sap, an immensely useful crowd control ability that will reduce the number of enemies we have to fight at once when dealing with groups. And last but not least, dual wielding, which allows us to use an additional weapon in our offhand, assuming we can, find one. We then head north to the Jasper Lode mine, and as we scouted out for Marshal Dugan, we managed to find a chest with another upgrade, a pair of leather Pioneer bracers with 23 armor. We then head back to the Murlocs near the logging camp and find another chest as we work to collect their fins, but since these mobs are closer to our level, fighting more than one can still be a bit dicey. So, I decided to start employing a technique called gouge kiting, where we gouge one enemy, removing it from combat for a few seconds, and continue kiting the active mob away as I attack. This means that even though baseline gouge only stuns for 4 seconds, we can use it to essentially turn any 2v1 into 2 separate 1v1s. In this case, the second mob ended up resetting for some reason, which is actually a better outcome, but this isn't usually the case, since oftentimes hitting one enemy in a group will result in the aggro leashes of all the mobs being reset, meaning that the entire group will continue to chase you. And upon killing the last few Murlocs guarding the chest, we look out with not 1, not 2, but 3 different weapons. A green 2-handed axe, a gun, and a 1-handed fine scimitar. Now since the first 2 aren't really useful, they're obviously going to get sold, but the scimitar makes up for it, since it finally allows us to start dual wielding, providing a noticeable increase to our overall damage. Not long after, we hit level 11, allowing us to put our second point into improved Sinister Strike, find another chest with nothing but food and a potion, finish up the Murloc quest and the Defias Bandana quest, lose a duel to a warrior in Goldshire because I suck at PvP and because all my gear consists entirely of white and grey rarity items, turn in a few quests in Stormwind, join the Alliance FBI, and then head back to the Stonefield farm to turn in the Princess quest. While we're there, we grab another not-so-useful chest from the outside of the fargodeep mine, and on the inside find a rare kobold by the name of Narg the Taskmaster. And after making a deal with a nearby rogue interested in killing him, I help him to defeat the rare in exchange for the chest he was guarding. And while he got a white rarity belt from the rare, I only ended up with a mail chest piece that we can't wear, some potions, and a few other miscellaneous junk. And even though we made it out of the cave just in time for another outside chest, that one also gave us more junk. We then move on to the gnoll quests near the border to Westfall, and while the majority of chests here are guarded by packs of 4 or more, we managed to pretty quickly find a more easily accessible one which gives us a pair of worn leather pants with 34 armor, finally replace our cloth ones. We then get invited to a group for Hogger, and then make sure to mark him once he respawns, so I don't accidentally run into him while killing the other gnolls. As we finish those up, we manage to find a chest guarded by only 3 gnolls instead of 4, and then manage to separate 2 of them, which is much more manageable, especially since a friendly hunter ended up taking the second one. We then kill the third, grab the chest, which didn't have anything good, and then hit level 12 by turning in the gnoll armband quest. As for our talent point, I wasn't quite sure where to put it just yet, as I was debating between the extra dodge chance and the increased duration of gouge, so I decided to save it for later once I made up my mind. And that just left one last quest for us to do in Elywnn Forest, the Rogue quest. Now all you really need to do to complete this quest is to pickpocket this goblin in this little house by the river, which sounds easy enough. However, you can probably notice this very tempting looking chest right next to him. And since we're all about stealing from chests, obviously we had to try and pilfer it.
And then I remembered the chest is bait.
Since attacking the goblin spawns 3 adds that immediately attack the player, that tons of hardcore rogues have died from doing this exact thing that I forgot about. But luckily, we have sprint and evasion for situations like these, and manage to get away with relative ease. Finishing up in Goldshire, we turn in everything we can before training 2 more useful abilities, those being Kick, providing us with a way to interrupt enemy spellcasts, and then the ability to parry enemy attacks, giving us a chance to negate enemy melee damage, which is a nice passive bonus to our defensive capabilities. We then head back to Stormwind to turn in our rogue quest, and then retreat to the Deep Run tram to catch a few rats as we mentally recover from having to sell the Blade of Cunning. And with that, it would seem that our time in Elywnn Forest has come to an end, meaning that it was at last time to return to Teldrassil to complete some unfinished business. So that meant we would need to make our way back to Menethil Harbor to catch the boat to Darkshore.
Or we could just harp, because I'm a professional and never changed it from Dolinar.
So yeah, we're back in Teldrassil, and I guess that means now we have to go into the Barrow Den. Thank you very much for watching, and big thank you as well to all my recent subscribers. When I posted episode 1 of this series, I was sitting at only about 500 subscribers, and the video kind of just sat there for over a week with only 20 views or something like that. So to see my channel just randomly blow up like this has just been super amazing. And it's kind of funny since I've actually been sitting on a lot of this footage for over a year now. So it's kind of like I'm going right along with you for the ride as I make these videos, and as I remember everything that happened back when I was actually recording everything. But with that in mind, I just want to end this video by again saying thank you, and that I'm incredibly grateful for all the wonderful comments and support so far, and I hope that I can continue making videos that you all enjoy. But that's all I have for you today, so as always, thank you.